Moto G was my second smartphone ever, and it was the first phone that gave me a flagship experience. With 1 GB of RAM, this thing used to fly through apps and games. It was even able to run Asphalt 8, which barely few devices were able to. I still remember showing this phone to my sister and my friends, and they were all astonished by its looks and mainly its performance. Okay, it's not only about my experience, but Moto G was one important phone in the history of Motorola. It was launched on November 13, 2013, which was actually my birthday by the way, and this phone was a huge hit. Media was all over covering this, and fast forward 9 years later, we still see Moto releasing so many smartphones with G branding. Now, this phone was popular for a number of reasons. Faster chip, 1 GB of RAM, which was pretty rare at that time, or even the display. Just look at it, when the screen's turned off, it just looks like a sheet of glass. So now let's move on to my experience of using this in 2022. In short, I loved it. And this might be because of the fact that I was already really excited to use it after so many days. But let's go in a little deep now. To start off, the hardware on Moto G is aesthetically awesome and it shows. It's still a fast and responsive phone. There were few delayed responses at times, but there is no major lag and it's still snappy. One thing that I felt weird though is it has two large bezels. I mean, when it was launched in 2013, it's very common. But after such a gap, those bezels does look a bit odd. Other than that, this phone is quite comfortable in hands. Another thing I felt using this phone is, this is quite heavy. It weighs in 143 grams, which is lesser than 95% of the smartphones these days, and that means they should feel lighter, right? But what I think is, the weight on these newer models like the iPhone 13 Pro or the OnePlus 8 is equally distributed. But when it comes to the Moto G, most of its weight is at the center where the battery stays, and that could be a reason why it feels heavier. Now on the material side, it's a completely plastic build with rubberized texture on the back. And yes, the back is removable. But the funny part here is, even though you can remove the back panel, the battery is completely sealed. It's one of the early phones that came with this weird idea of sealing in the battery, but giving the option to remove the back panel to insert the SIM card, etc. I also like the fact that this phone has a headphone jack. Now on the software side of things, this is a Moto phone, and as you know, it runs stock Android. It's released with Android 4.4 out of the box, and it's one of the snappiest phones I've held at that time. I mean, to such an extent where it was able to run some of the most demanding games that time. So right now it runs Lollipop 5.1 and it's still decently fast. Now one thing I found little annoying is the widgets tab here. Android back then has given way more importance to widgets than they should be. Widgets are cool, I accept, but I rarely see people using them. The animations here are also a little retro looking, but I like them. Yeah, also one more thing, here from the menu page if I open the widgets pane and then press the back button, and after some time clicking the menu icon again opens in the widgets pane. I would have definitely loved to see this resorting back to apps page. Now seeing this Moto G and OnePlus 8 side by side, I realized that Android at the moment tries to make icons look more symmetric, which was far from reality those days. Okay, let's talk about cameras. This phone has a 5 megapixel back camera and a 1.3 megapixel selfie camera. Let's look at the samples now. This phone has very normal cameras, the pictures were little hazy and colorless. Under bright light they were okay, usable, but as soon as we move into little low light, too much noise starts to pick up. This is not a surprise for me and it is completely expected. Now the battery. Battery life on this phone is surprisingly good. I still am able to pull it at least 6 hours of SOT, which is way more than I thought it would be. Now to conclude things off, I was actually very excited to use this phone again, and even though the experience was not as impacting as current flagships, I still share a lot of college memories with this phone, some of which I even cherish now. Nonetheless, it's a great experience. So if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel for more amazing technology content. I hope to see you in my next video.